The next story was inspired by one of the most bizarre Ring camera footages ever recorded. It's been quite the hot topic when it comes to doorbell footage, as the behavior from this estranged man leaves you wondering what his motive was. More coverage on this incident will be disclosed at the end of the story. Here's what the story looked like. I had a 9-to-5 job at the mall as a salesperson, so it was incredibly exhausting at times. Also, I'm a married woman and my family and I just moved into a new home. The front yard was always well taken care of by my dear husband. He was always meticulous about it. But after living there for a month or two, there was a foul smell that I couldn't understand where it was coming from. It smelled like crap, which didn't make sense because we had no pets at home. My husband had long been allergic to cats and dogs, and unfortunately our kids inherited this from their father. At first, I wondered if it was the result of a curious and troublesome raccoon that somehow climbed up the walls. There were times when I would ring the doorbell, alerting my husband and kids to open the door, and would notice a wet and slimy substance on the doorbell. When I had told my husband about the slime, he reckoned that it could have been snails that would crawl up the wall every now and then. But neither of us took the time to confirm our theories because we had more important things to do, so I got used to wiping it off every time I arrived home from work. One day when I got home, my nose had caught a putrid scent swimming in the air along the front yard. It was terrible. It smelled like urine. I searched for the source, and soon enough, I found myself facing one side of the wall with dried yellow stains that defiled the elegant white hues, which were meant to make the walls look clean. I had just encountered a highly irrational customer at work, so coming home to this made me furious. Instead of using the doorbell, I banged the door. I heard someone scurry to the door, and when it opened, I saw my husband holding what appeared to be a crowbar behind his back and said, "What the hell, Mary? I thought you were some kind of wacko. What's the problem?"
What's the problem? Are you seriously asking me that? Could you not see nor smell what is outside our house? You're the one who tends to the front yard most of the time, right?
I replied, my mind full of stress. "I was in my office upstairs all day, honey. What are you talking about?" My husband said, bewildered and somewhat piqued.
Yeah, right. Was it you or the kids who took a piss on the wall in our front yard? Tell me.
It felt like a tsunami of negative emotions had overflowed after keeping them in for so long at work. When the kids heard me yelling, they immediately came to the front door and one of them asked, "Mommy, what's wrong?" Since my boys did misbehave from time to time, I grabbed them by the arms and said,
"One of you peed on the wall outside our house. Do you boys think it's funny staining the wall like that? Or were you too busy playing outside that you wouldn't use our restroom, huh? Who was it?"
Both of them cried, begging me to let them go. And then my husband intervened, forcing his way between the kids and I. "What's the matter with you, huh? None of us went outside today, okay? The kids were upstairs playing the whole time. Are you happy now?" My husband replied, wrapping his arms around the kids. After releasing my anger, I showed my husband where I saw the yellow stains and made him clean it all up. I still suspected that one of my kids did it and that my husband and children decided to keep it from me. The kids cowered in fear at the corner of the room as I glared at them angrily.
"Stay in your room! You're both grounded!"
Shedding tears, the two boys nodded. The following day, I encountered the same thing upon arriving home. The smell of crap lingered in the air once again, with more slime on the doorbell and urine on the wall. There seemed to also be a disgusting white substance dripping down the wall, almost like someone had sneezed, creating a big blob of snot. As a result, I threw up. Unable to control myself any longer, I went inside the house and all hell broke loose. I toppled tables and chairs and shattered drinking glasses and bowls on the floor.
Who the heck is doing this?
I demanded the truth. My husband ran downstairs and gasped upon seeing the mess I had contrived. Following this incident, we decided it would be best to have a Ring camera installed in and out of the house. Since then, all the slime, urine, and putrid smell simply vanished. Whoever was responsible for this was clearly aware of our cameras and was afraid. For the next couple of days, I felt relieved. I was convinced that we had finally dealt with the issue once and for all. A week later, my husband and I visited relatives who invited us for dinner. This was a particular occasion where we had to leave the kids at home since we'd be coming home very late. Everything was going smoothly. I had the chance to unwind and catch up with my cousins, aunts, and uncles. However, moments later, my phone kept ringing incessantly. For the first 5 minutes, I simply shrugged it off. But when it lasted for about 15 minutes, I finally checked my phone and realized I was getting notifications from my Ring security camera at home. Upon clicking the notification and seeing the live footage, I saw a man licking the doorbell. He wore what looked like a jacket over a button-up shirt. He had short hair, a big nose, a mustache, and a beard. But I didn't recognize this man at all. It wasn't only the licking that bothered me though, but how he was licking it. It was like he was making love with the doorbell, and that completely freaked me out. I honestly couldn't believe what I was witnessing. But what was even more frightening was that our kids were left alone at home. I immediately called the police while my husband frantically drove us back home along with 3 of my uncles. Thoughts of the stranger entering our house and stabbing the kids with a kitchen knife terrified me. When my husband noticed my anxiety, he held my hand and asked me to have faith. Upon arriving home, the man was no longer there. All that remained was his saliva on the doorbell, his urine on the wall, and that strange white substance.
Well, prepare to be seriously grossed out here. Residents are reeling after a man was caught on camera licking a California family's doorbell. Yeah, police say that the suspect spent 3 hours licking the doorbell and milling around the family's yard. The security camera captured the incident and notified the owners who were out of town. Authorities say the footage helped them identify the suspect. They are still looking for the man, but say that he could face a number of charges.
The next Ring camera footage happens in broad daylight. There appears to be nothing unsettling about what's being shown here. It just looks like a male holding what appears to be a box of candy, like one of those people that go door to door and try to sell you something to help support their cause. But what happens next will blow your mind. Here's what it looked like. I've seen many freaky Ring camera footages online, but nothing beats what I'm about to tell you. If there ever was a Candyman that existed in the real world, you're about to witness it. It happened about a month ago when I was home alone. The world would have never witnessed what unfolded if I hadn't installed a Ring camera on my front door. It happened on a Tuesday in broad daylight. I was working from home on my laptop when I heard my doorbell ringing. As a safety precaution, I always like to check the surveillance footage to see who was out front. There stood a gentleman that looked to be in his mid-20s with a mask over his face, holding what appeared to be a box of candy. At first glance, he looked like one of those candy salesmen that sell chocolate door to door. I found this rather strange as people who do this kind of thing were typically on the younger side, but I didn't see any harm in it. I ended up entering the foyer and opening the door, only to see the same individual I saw in the camera. Except he looked more deranged close up.
Hi, sir. Would you like to buy some chocolate?
How much?
How much you got? You seem like you have a nice house. You must be loaded. How about you buy all my chocolate?
Kid, you don't just come to someone's house and request—
Shut up and buy my chocolate, rich boy.
How about this? Get the hell off my property and leave me alone or I'm calling the cops!
Get on the floor, you little shit!
And that's when I got robbed point blank. It all went down in a split second. Several bandits ambushed and robbed my house, leaving myself and the candy seller dumbfounded. But after the local news stations got a hold of the story, it was later found out that the candy salesman was a part of the whole robbery scheme. He had been going to multiple houses around the neighborhood, posing as a candy salesman, only to lure people to open their front door.
A brazen robber posing to sell candy along with 3 other people are still on the loose tonight. The frightening daytime armed robbery home invasion that happened on Monday in Stockton has a lot of neighbors nervous.
What appeared to be a young man selling candy in a North Stockton, Murata area neighborhood quickly turned into a homeowner's worst nightmare. This neighbor, not the one robbed, captured video through his own Ring camera about 5 minutes earlier of the alleged candy man coming to his door. He watched a live feed on his home Ring camera as the phony candy seller came to his door.
There are hundreds of doorbell video clips revolving around clowns, but the backstory behind this video has got to be the most disturbing. Here you can see the clown in front of a house while holding what appears to be a large kitchen knife. The following story portrays a dramatized reenactment of the encounter. Here's what the story looked like. In the last several years, it felt like a lot of the big dramas and outrages have been started by what are called jokes by the people that are saying and doing the things that are getting negative attention. Historically, you'd find a guy like me sticking to the side of, let people joke how they want and don't get offended if you personally don't find it funny. Quite a few people have tried to persuade me out of believing this. Some of them were level heads just trying to get me to understand why people are sensitive to some things, but others were a little more aggressive in their statements to me. Of course, I never really listened to the people who were trying to have a productive conversation. I genuinely loved to jump into the fray and troll people who I thought were taking their opinions a bit too seriously. And I wasn't just this way online. The digital presence of a troll that I put up was an extension of who I was in real life. But I always knew that most people would describe me as having an attitude problem, being a little crass, or just a jerk. I didn't mind being seen that way. It was all verbal stuff anyway. I never threatened or hurt anyone physically. But the thing about always being negative like that is, well, it builds up a lot of bad karma, as I've come to learn. And eventually all this bad karma caught up to me. I never saw it coming, but once it happened, I started reflecting on my actions and how they got me in that situation. It was all pretty obvious. On Fridays I didn't have work, so I'd always get a head start on my weekend. I spent most Fridays lounging around my house and doing some chores at a very leisurely pace, sometimes pre-gaming for the parties I was going to find myself at come nighttime. This was one of those occasions on which I started getting rowdy pretty early in the day. I was getting my mail around 3 p.m., a drink in one hand as I stepped out the front door to check the box. I remember being rather annoyed with the bills I received in the mail that day. I'd gotten a ticket for running a red light, which arrived at the same time as my utility bill and HOA dues notice, so quite a few expenses popping all at once like that soured my mood pretty bad. That's when I saw one of the neighborhood kids biking down the road, probably going home from school. I saw that kid a lot. My house must have been on his commute to school. From time to time, I'd call out to him and try to make some jokes, but he never seemed to appreciate them. He'd always give me the evil eye or throw me the bird or just ride on by pretending he didn't hear me. On this particular day, he looked worn out, dejected, seemed like the perfect target for a little joshing around. I took a guess as to what was messing with him and tried to dig at it. Yo kid, maybe if you ditched the raggedy old bike and got a car, that girl wouldn't have curved you so bad. Suddenly, the kid did something I didn't expect. He hit the brakes hard and skidded to a stop, swinging out his back tire and looking straight at me. Maybe if you got a life and minded your own business, I wouldn't have to take you down a peg. What does that even mean, kid? You can't say weird stuff like that. You'll never make any friends that way. You better sleep with one eye open, jerkwad! In the moment, I couldn't help but laugh. A threat never feels emptier than when it's shouted at you from someone 10 years younger than you on a bicycle. However, though I guess I can never prove it, I'm pretty sure that threat was real. A night or two later, I slept soundly. I didn't give any mind to that kid. I have about 15 security cameras and a bunch of high-powered floodlights all around the exterior of my house, which I had installed for reasons you could expect for someone of my personality. I always knew my antics could create enemies who might want to try and get back at me through my house, but I never thought the cameras would capture something as strange as they did. When I awoke the next morning, I couldn't shake this feeling that something was wrong. Every time I rounded a corner in my house, I got the chills, and I couldn't tell why. To alleviate my suspicions, I decided to check the security footage from the previous night, thinking there would be nothing of any concern. I was wrong. Late in the middle of the night, around 2 in the morning, an unidentified figure approached my house. He or she was dressed in a clown costume, looking just like one of those creepy killer clown sickos from all those weird videos that were surfacing in 2016. They were armed with a ridiculously long knife which they brandished in front of the cameras. First they snuck up to my front door and tried to open it, jostling the handle to see if it was locked. Of course, it was locked and they weren't able to get in from there. The microphone on my doorbell overheard their deranged conversation with themselves.
You locked the door? How dare you? I know you can see me through your little camera, you vermin. Take all the screenshots and footage that you want. This won't be the last time you see this face.
Even as they talked to themselves like a crazy person, they were extremely quiet. Still, the motion sensors on the floodlights lit them up all the same. This clown character wasn't spooked by the lights, however. They seemed to be familiar with the layout of my house, like they'd seen it before. They did an entire lap around it, checking the lock on every single window and door, peering inside and scratching the walls with their knife.
You really dodged a bullet. Or should I say, a knife.
But the weirdest part is, as quietly as they appeared, they also just left. It's very disturbing to know that I was completely unaware of all this as it was happening. I have an alarm system in my house, but all it would have taken was one unlocked door to give them enough time to sneak in and slit my throat before I'd even woken up. It's pretty embarrassing, honestly. I can't say for sure, but based on when this all happened and how popular those killer clown videos were with high schoolers at the time, it makes perfect sense to me that the one kid on the bike would be the culprit. But again, I wasn't 100% sure. The fact that he strolled around the perimeter of the house made it seem as if it wasn't his first visit. But for the first few days, I didn't connect those dots, and I was worried half to death that I was being stalked by a real sicko. After seeing the footage, I really did sleep with one eye open for a few weeks. Just goes to show you should be careful who you mess with. It certainly taught me a bit about who I choose to make jokes about, and when. I know it's punching down to mess with a high schooler, but that doesn't mean the kid can't be dangerous. I mean, the kind of kid who would do something like this just for getting teased is the same kind of kid who might just snap on a whole different day, in a much worse way, given a different situation.
For this story, it's certainly not doorbell footage, but something even more chilling. Something that's gone beyond those realms, as you're now looking at breaking and entering. Here, you can see the perpetrator clearly lurking within this individual's household while they're asleep. The next story was inspired by this very chilling case. My mom's a lot like a lot of moms. I think because she's always had the habit of giving me advice that didn't really seem important at the time. She always tried to boil down life lessons into a saying, but she should have known that I was never going to learn that way.
Girl, you better be careful hanging around all those boys. They're going stupid with puberty. Whatever, mama. I can handle myself. You ain't listening to me now, but you'll know what I'm talking about soon enough. All boys your age want the same thing, and it ain't your personality. Mom, come on, they're just my friends.
She'd say stuff like that so much that I just started tuning her out. It was my second year of high school and all I wanted to do was live my life. I didn't have time to be sheltered, and it wasn't like I was an idiot. I knew who was good and who was bad for me, as far as I was concerned. Even though I wouldn't admit it, I always knew she was right about one thing. Boys are thirsty, and some of them don't make up for it. I got a lot of attention from boys, but I curbed pretty much every single one of them, because most of them weren't worth the time of day, let alone the trouble of dating them. Personally, I wasn't ready for all the dating stuff, though I did enjoy getting closer to it, watching from a distance as people I didn't care about from school got into drama and started fights. Most of what I did was just hang out with friends, but I wasn't open about that with my mom either. I knew she wouldn't approve of the way we like to hang out. It was hard to keep it from her, though. She can be overbearing, asking me all sorts of questions every time I got home from hanging out.
Where you been all night? I was worried about you. Come here and give your mama a hug. Really, Mom? I'm tired. You're just gonna live here and not hug your mama? Get over here, girl. Fine. Child, you smell like a skunk. Who were you with tonight? I was just chilling with the girls, Mama. We didn't do anything. I'm sure y'all did a whole lot of nothing. Those girls are a bad influence on you. Getting you into that stuff at such a young age. What stuff are you talking about? Don't play dumb with me. You know. You best be careful who you're getting that stuff from. Those boys are the worst of all. You can't ever be alone with them, you hear me? Yeah, I hear you.
I got so tired of her interrogating me every time I got home that I started to sneak out after she went to sleep. I figured if she didn't know that I'd ever left, she wouldn't know any better about what I was getting up to. I should have known she would find out. Moms find about everything. She caught me sneaking back in through my window one night, and she flipped out. She grounded me, gave me a stupid curfew, and didn't let me go anywhere. And she took my phone away. The only thing I could use to talk to my friends was my school laptop, which she knew she couldn't take away. But she did not stop there. She bought that camera that goes on your doorbell, and she got extra cameras to put in the house. To make matters worse, she didn't even let me sleep in my room. She made me sleep on the couch. All that combined made it impossible to go anywhere. Even if I wanted to sneak out, there was no way I could get away with it. And because I couldn't hang out with my friends anymore, they started to turn on me. They understood for a couple of days that I was grounded by my helicopter mom, but it didn't last. After a week or so, they just started talking down to me, saying stuff like I was a mama's girl, prude, and a flake for not hanging out. And it wasn't just my friends. It seemed like it was everybody I knew, boys included. And even some of the boys that I've curved were coming back into my DMs just to diss me. That made me mad as all get out. But the worst part of it was that it made me realize my mom was right about who I was hanging out with. Sure, they were cool when we were hanging out together, but as soon as my back was turned, they started talking smack. And then when I tried to talk to them, they were all full of vinegar. Like I was totally replaceable to them and they didn't want to even hang out with me anymore. That, or they wanted something from me and they were mad because they didn't have a chance to get it anymore. But it didn't end there. Those cameras my mom put up in the house never caught me sneaking out. I was going to wait for her to chill out before I tried anything, but what ended up happening made it so that my mom would never be chill again. I was sleeping on the couch, kinda half asleep because it wasn't too comfortable, and I was all mad about my friends. Every once in a while I'd open my eyes, and the only thing I could see in the darkness of the living room was the red light on the camera that was watching me. It made me so uncomfortable knowing that at any moment I could be getting watched by my mom on the other end of that camera. As it turns out, that was the least of my worries. One of those times I woke up, I looked straight up and saw a creepy-looking figure standing over me. He was slouched inside of a hood, staring right at me. For a moment, that felt like a lifetime. My blood went cold, and my body froze. I didn't know what he was going to do. I guess you ain't got money no more, but we can work out a deal for a quarter.
Mom! There's somebody in the house! Call the cops, Mama!
The creep bolted off as soon as I hollered. My mama was up in a flash, running into the room with a big old flashlight. I'm sure she would have loved to beat over the kid's head. Boy, she fawned over me something fierce. I really was scared from the shock when I woke up, but after a minute or two, I wasn't shaken. I continued to act scared though, just because I figured that's what my mom expected. She had the police come out and they asked me all their questions. Then the news heard about it and came through with all of their questions. But honestly, by then I didn't care. I told them all the same thing, that I didn't recognize him, but I think he went to my school. The truth is that I know exactly who he is, but I didn't tell that to anyone. That would just be more trouble for me than it's worth. I made sure to give that creep a piece of my mind in my own way. My mama taught me how to do that just fine. To be totally clear, my mom ended up being right about a lot of things. Her and I got a lot closer over this experience. but not much has changed. I listen to her advice a lot more, but I sure ain't gonna let some lanky deadbeat scare me out of living my life the way I want to.
Home security cameras here captured a video of a stranger standing directly over a sleeping teenager in Kansas. Take a look. Anaya Robinson says when she opened up her eyes, she felt like she was in a scene from a movie. The Wichita Police Department responded quickly, but the intruder had already left the home.
Hi, sir. Would you like to buy some chocolate?
How much?
How much you got? You seem like you have a nice house. You must be loaded. How about you buy all my chocolate?
Kid, you don't just come to someone's house and request—
Shut up and buy my chocolate, rich boy.